And I will begin the webinar. Just give it 5 seconds.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the July 13th meeting of the Thurston Regional Housing Council. It's a lovely summer day. This is our short meeting, so I really want to just acknowledge who's here. See, representing Olympia, we've got Councilmember Jim Cooper. Do you have anybody here supporting you, Jim?
Our housing director, Darian Lightfoot, is here as well. And then Danny Madrone sends her regrets. She's out today.
All righty, great. How about Michael from Tumwater?
Hi there, Michael Towser, Tumwater City Council. I'm joined by Councilmember Joan Cathy, as well as Brad Medrud from our planning department. I'm scrolling through to see if John Doan is on. I don't think he is with us at this moment. He may join in a little bit. We'll see.
All righty. And Thurston County?
Carolina Mejia, and with us today, I have Tom Webster. I have our county manager, Ramiro Chavez, and I have Keely Marino and Jacinda Stelges.
Wow, cast of thousands. That's great. And I'm Carolyn Cox, representing City of Lacey, and we have here Mayor Andy Ryder, and we have from our staff Grant Beck, and we have who am I missing? Oh, Kelly Adams, of course. So welcome, everybody. Could I get a quick motion to approve the agenda?
So move. This is Michael.
I'll
Thank you.
second. This is Carolina.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Anybody have any questions or concerns? Okay, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Righty, thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from our June 22nd meeting?
This is Jim. So moved.
Okay. I'll second that. This is Carolyn. Any questions or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. So I'd like to turn it over now to Tom to talk about the right-of-way RFP recommendations. And
All right.
Tom, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Thank you.
Sure.
So we have two, we're bringing two sets of recommendations to you this evening. As you will recall, we received some additional money under the Consolidated Homeless Grant. This was additional money that we found out about, so around $340,000 that we had to award. The RHC tech team, rather than issuing a new request for proposals, we went back and revisited the proposals that we received this past spring under our kind of annual RFP process. We had more requests than we could fund, so we went back and revisited those proposals, and we're bringing forward you recommendations tonight regarding those additional CHG funds. We also have recommendations related to the right-of-way RFP that was issued. So this is a separate set of funding via the state for those living on state right-of-ways. And so we issued an RFP looking for outreach support, as well as hoteling for those actively fleeing domestic or intimate partner violence. So we have two sets of recommendations for you tonight. So I'm going to share my screen. The RHC tech team has reviewed and is bringing forth these recommendations. So the first one in your meeting packet, hopefully folks can see that, is the CHG Consolidated Homeless Grant recommendation. So what we're sharing with you is the list of applications that we initially received this past spring, what the initial funding request was from those applications, the awards that were issued that you made recommendations and that contracts are being executed for. And then the last column is what are the recommendations for supplemental funding. So as you can see, we're recommending additional funding to 4 organizations. 3 of these organizations received an initial award earlier this spring in May, and we're recommending to add funding to bring those applications for full funding. So that is the Family Support Center, CHG Targeted Prevention proposal, the Catholic Community Services Drexel House Shelter, and Ponza Coyote Village. So additional funding to those requests. And then the one project we were not able to fund initially, but with this additional funds of $207,588 for OLIMAP to continue their scattered site program. And so that totals the $340,000 that we have available to award. So let me stop there. So anyone from the tech team can kind of weigh in on this. To give a little bit of a preview on this, because some of these decisions were impacted by the right-of-way funding proposals as well. So I'm going to talk about them at the same time, and then we can go back and make those decisions. So on the right-of-way applications, we received 1 application for the hoteling of DV that was from Safe Place. And so the recommendation is to fund that application at $200,000 for Safe Place. We received 2 applications for the outreach activities. Those applications, after review, the recommendation from the tech team is to award the $300,000 to OLIMAP, and that's $300,000 a year for the next 3 years. So that would be a total $900,000 award. Based on a review of the applications, both strong applications. Really, and this was kind of scoring you see there out of 50. The difference was the tech team felt that OLIMAP had a stronger sense of connecting people to services, was stronger in that regard, and that was really the deciding factor between kind of the 2 organizations. So kind of combining that, going back to the CHG, that brings a total award to OLIMAP to close to $500,000 to continue their scattered site and to do this outreach for the rights of way, and then $200,000 for Safe Place. So those are the recommendations. So let me stop there and ask questions, and if there's anyone from the tech team who would have additional kind of information or context that they think is helpful to include.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, please. I can't see you with the
And I will
it is so.
stop
Yeah.
the share, and I'm happy to reshare that if that's helpful.
Yeah.
So for the OLIMAP, there's kind of these 2, I guess I don't totally understand the Venn diagram that represents, kind of the 2 different contracts for services and how they overlap. So it was kind of my understanding that scattered site, which is, that first one from the CHG, included some of the elements of connecting people to services that are represented in the second contract too. So it is getting this amount, which, it's $500,000 for this year-ish, and then drops down to $300,000 the year after. Is that pretty approximate to the level of service we were at with the scattered site program, or is that not completely whole still compared to what the funding levels were at? I'm trying to understand, like, on the ground, how will it look different? The scattered site look different between the service levels people have been expecting previously, and then what can be expected under these 2 new contracts moving forward?
Yeah, I think at least from the tech team's point of view, and we've not had kind of discussions directly with OLIMAP, so we haven't shared these recommendations with them. So I think some discussion would be needed. So the previous scattered site contract was closer to 650,000, I think, in total. So it's not there quite at that funding level. There has been certainly been an evolution of the scattered site program with the closure of Deschutes, the soon to be kind of closure of Evenson Road, the eventual closure of Wheeler. And so the scattered site model, my understanding, is really moving to more of a mobile outreach based And I looked to Keely and others to kind of to weigh in if you've got different perspectives. So I think there's been an evolution. So with the outreach to the specific to the state right of ways, our thought was that in a sense kind of supplements the mobile outreach that they would be doing to non-state right of way sites. Part of this would be kind of the outreach to those state right of ways. And then there would be funding to allow them to do continued kind of outreach and their scatter site model to other non-right of way locations. But it would be more on a, I know they're also working with some faith-based communities that are fixed, First Christian, kind of New Hope communities, and there may be one or two others, but I think that's my understanding at least. I would ask kind of Keely or anyone else to weigh on that, if anything on that, they have anything to add or any corrections to what I said.
So the services are the same under the contracts or similar, but the funding buckets are different because the right-of-way one can only be used kind of on those DOT lands. Correct. And the CHG can be utilized on Ensign or wherever.
Anywhere.
We need anywhere. Okay.
I don't want to say they're similar services. Yes.
Okay. Got it.
I saw
Thank you.
Darian nodding. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Darian? Okay. Anybody else?
Can I ask a follow-up?
Please.
So just on the 200,000 part of that, is it now not a pilot and it's able to be used in any camp in the urban area or the county? What's the boundary of that?
Yeah, so I think that's we'll need to negotiate that a little bit with OAMAP, but with the closure, I know, and it will allow them to continue supporting Ensign Road until that is addressed, I believe, in September. But then it would become more broad, kind of using their mobile outreach model. Wheeler is also scheduled to be closed, and then with no longer to shoot. So it would not be the same fixed sites that the pilot program operated under.
Okay, cool. Yeah, then I just ask, once we get through the recommendations, if we could schedule a little bit more thorough briefing on the lessons learned from the pilot and how we're changing our way of doing business on the ground from that experience. I know we've seen their report, but just from the perspective of the funder, I think that would be really helpful for the RHC. Maybe once you get the contract negotiated. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
If the ground wouldn't keep changing from under us. Anyway, I want to acknowledge that Scott Spence, our Lacey City Manager, has joined the meeting. You got here right after we did intros, Scott, so here we go. Anybody have any further questions or comments on the right-of-way recommendations? Tom, you're looking for a vote on this today?
Yeah, so we're looking to kind of get the recommendation of the REC for us to take forward to the Board of County Commissioners for final approval.
All right. Anybody ready to offer up a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Been moved by Carolina, seconded by Jim. Any discussion? Well, I just would like to appreciate, Tom, the thoughtful way that you went about this, and you made what seemed like was going to be a totally unmanageable situation come together very well. So thank you. Really appreciate that, because I know I can just imagine what your shop looks like right now. So, yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. All righty. So all in favor of the motion to approve the recommendations, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right. Keely, are you going to update us on the right-of-way proposal update?
Yes, I'm going to invite Jacinda and Darian to participate in this presentation. Do you have the slides are in the packet, but I do not have that particular slide deck ready. Jacinda, do you have that slide deck?
I can share it, Keely, if you'd like.
Okay, I'll just kick us off with, unless Jacinda, you wanted to do a little blurb at the beginning. Okay, so, just a reminder that this was the end of May when we were approached through a single phone call from Ted Kelleher from the State Department of Commerce asking us to swiftly respond to an urgent request from the governor's office around clearing these right-of-ways. This whole entire effort has come down from the state. It is an ask of our region. It's an ask of our county to respond to the will and the requests of the governor to remove folks that are currently living on Department of Transportation right-of-ways. We acknowledge that it is an extreme ask of staff to pivot attention from all the other activities going on in our community around homelessness and affordable housing, as well as our service providers that have been asked to pivot their programming, to respond quickly to requests for proposals with impossible turnaround times, and that it does impact our system, that these requests and this proposal that we have put together for you as per the request of the governor and Department of Commerce does have an impact on our system. And it is asking us to, in some cases, kind of circumvent a lot of the strategic planning that we have undergone over the past several years. So just as a reminder, just to center us and where this proposal is coming from, the governor issued some legislation that did not pass this year, and so he took the legislation and as the governor can, instated it regardless, and created some funds through this proviso budget in order to remove folks living on Department of Transportation right-of-ways as swiftly as possible. The first deadline was June 15th, so it has slowed down significantly in order for us to have procurement processes and thoughtful strategic conversations in as swift a fashion as we possibly can. We are required to, in our community, not ask anyone to be moved from the right-of-ways without offering them a safer place to live than a right-of-way, a meaningful improvement in their living situation through shelter or housing, and housing habitability standards being, baseline at the federal level, like what does habitable mean? Utilizing best practices in housing first and low barrier trauma-informed care as much as possible. And then listed below are our targeted right-of-ways in Thurston County. We are the only balance of state community that is being prioritized from the governor's office. The other 4 communities are Spokane, Snohomish, King County, and Pierce. So we have a significant number of encampments, but not necessarily the largest encampment. Spokane has 1 right-of-way encampment with 500 people they're trying to address that issue with up there. So Jacinda, do you want to talk about the different funding?
Yes. So I will talk about the different funding, but talk intend to talk very briefly and at a somewhat high level. So initially, when Commerce approached us and the other 4 regions, counties that are being targeted through this initiative, the communication was that there's about $135 million available via the proviso that would be distributed among those 5 regions, taking into account a multitude of factors. And we originally told that this number of approximately 19 million, it would be our number to work with, and that the rights of ways identified by the state, that our options were to respond and work within this dollar amount, or to not respond, and the state would essentially move forward with finding someone within the community or potentially not within the community willing to respond and willing to relocate. So given that, we obviously felt it was our responsibility to respond and to try to make sure that individuals are being relocated in ways that are safe and responsible, and as much as we can speaks to our system. So since that initial number has been released, the state has continued, even as of an hour ago, communicate that while this number has been thrown out, we are not expected to submit a proposal that stays within that 19 million, that they very much want us to propose to them everything that we would be able to do if we had the financing. To the proposal that we do plan to submit speaks to that and does have a much larger dollar amount. The three sources of funds that Commerce has outlined for us to use to kind of work with, there's a proviso funds, home security funds, rapid capital acquisition. And I just do want to say this rapid capital acquisition, we've heard this program before. This is a rapid capital acquisition that's specific to the right-of-way. So there is also separately a rapid capital acquisition competitive process that is running somewhat simultaneously to this right-of-way process. So they did initially give us dollar amounts associated with each of these three funding pots. Again, at this point, it's feeling a little, neither really here or there, because we're putting in a proposal. We've been asked to put in a proposal that exceeds those dollar amounts. But I do want to call attention to the fact that we're talking about funding sources that would help with both capital improvements, one-time kind of capital improvements, as well as ongoing needs, including operational needs, services. One of the areas and one of the reasons we haven't moved forward on some of these things that are in the proposal in the past is because we haven't had funding, for example, for operations of a shelter or a permanent housing. So this is an opportunity that some of those funding sources are becoming available. We will see how much, the exact dollar amount. But that is good news that there's operating, there's acquisition, and funding would be spread over a 3-year period, or at least that's what's being communicated at this point. And then, sorry, I see that I do have the bullet at the bottom there, the rapid capital acquisition and also Apple Health and Home are two separate programs, competitive programs that could assist and leverage with any of these projects that we're proposing. The funding sources are separate from this right-of-way initiative, but certainly are related to much of what we're proposing in this, our response to Commerce. And I want to stop really quickly because if there are questions, I have a limited view of everyone. So if hands are raised or whatnot, I'm not seeing them. So someone please stop me if something comes up before and move on. So our proposed activities in the proposal is due the 21st of July. I think as Keely mentioned, we were made aware the beginning of June with the initial expectation that we would have a solution to moving people in rights of way within 2 weeks. We've been able to communicate that that's unreasonable, but still there's still a very tight timeline in terms of submitting a proposal by the 21st, with these high expectations of being able to relocate people in as responsible way as we can. So within the proposal, some of these items outlined here, we have already received MOUs and have executed memorandums of understanding with Commerce. So some of these things are already kind of in the works. That would be the shelter beds at Unity Commons, up to 24 beds being prioritized. I will go over these slides very quickly and then let Darian and Keely jump in if they want to expand or have questions, and then I'll jump back to cover the hotel acquisitions. So then the other piece is the outreach, which we just discussed, that RFP. That's for a 3-year period as well, to those living in rights-of-ways. I think as Keely has expressed, maybe I'm not sure if in this group, but has most definitely expressed everywhere else, that outreach will not be physically, involved in terms of sweeping camps, but is doing the outreach to transport, if needed, anyone to safer conditions. The $200,000 for the DV vouchers, which we expect that would provide 50 beds over about a 1-year, 12-month period. The other item that we have received a memorandum of understanding with, and I say we, City of Olympia, for developing approximately 50 tiny homes on Franz Anderson Road. So that is owned by the City of Olympia. That was just at the beginning of this year purchased, as well as operating funds for 3 years worth of operations at that site, and capital improvements to the city right away there, which would essentially make that site more feasible and more attractive to an affordable housing developer, which we would look to provide long-term housing on the west portion of that property. So we'll again pause if Keely or Darian want to jump in and expand, or if there's any questions on these activities.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that the property is co-owned with the county. We are co-owners of the Franz Anderson property. And yes, this contract was executed for this project on June 21st, and the site is being cleared and prepped. Due to the emphasis on urgency, we are moving forward pretty quickly to establish the tiny home village, get the site prepped for right-of-way improvements, and we'll hopefully be able to RFP the land and start making progress on permanent supportive housing on the adjacent side from the tiny home village. So yes, both elements of short-term and long-term housing are proposed in this right-of-way proposal. Thanks, Jessica.
All right. Keely, any additional thoughts around shelter or outreach or the vouchers?
No, I think we've covered that quite a bit, but thank you.
So then I will say, I do want to also go back, we don't have to roll back a slide, but just to note again that the shelter beds, the outreach, and the hotel vouchers for those fleeing violence are already in the works. The Unity Commons beds are already up and operating essentially. Franz Anderson is, we're proposing and looking confident in having that up and going, the tiny home village anyway, by the end of this year, hopefully before, but our proposal outlines year end 2022 as the target date for that. And again, that already has an MOU. And then the additional activities on our next slide, thank you. So additionally, the RFP called for, and certainly in our community, we agree that there needs to be permanent housing. This issue of relocating people is not going to be solved without having permanent units. So the RFP calls out that not more than 50% of the units being created or beds being offered are short-term temporary beds. So speaking to that and speaking to this group, this group's desire and all of our desire to have permanent units, beds, we've included 2 options for hotel purchases in the proposal as well. So one of those hotels we're looking at, both of them are within that 15 to 20 million initial acquisition range. Both would require rehab to occupy initially as an enhanced shelter, for approximately 2 years, and then convert both of them to permanent housing at year 3, when both of those offer approximately a little bit more than 100 rooms. So we'd be looking at 200 units between the 2 hotels of permanent housing, and that would be permanent for at least 20 years. And that our ask to the state is that they would assist in both acquisition costs as well as ongoing operational costs through the 3-year initiative. And then in the rehab costs associated as well. So very much a very comprehensive ask to them that if we are going to be creating permanent units, that there's a large dollar amount associated with that, and it's not all just acquisition. And then we are working with a affordable housing developer who has a history of purchasing and converting the same model that we are speaking about, and we've had conversations about either them operating or they are open to others, whether that be Interfaith or someone else being the operator. We have talked about coordinated entry. All these things are being discussed. At this point, they have put in purchase offers on both hotels. Those purchase offers are contingent on several things, including having full financing, including due diligence that would look at environmental factors of the property and when mechanical systems might need to be replaced and such. So there are due diligence timeframes built into that. And I think those purchase and sale agreements would be essentially looking at a fall of this year purchase if the due diligence process goes well and financing package is put together. So again, 2 hotels, and that certainly is new to our community, but is something that we as a regional housing council have talked about and have historically gotten caught up on the operating piece. So this funding proviso does offer some operational dollars. And then, thank you. So our next steps, again, the proposal is due the 21st, which is very soon. And Keely and Darian and I, our eyes are falling out trying to work on this very quickly and thoroughly. The same presentation was presented, not the exact same, but very similar, presented to HAT this morning. And Keely, if you feel it's appropriate, you can weigh in on some of the comments we got from them. And then from here, we submit our proposal by the 21st and wait for that negotiation process with Commerce, that would include, how much funding is available, what are they willing to fund, what are we able to do with what they're willing to fund, all of that. So yeah, Keely, again, if you want to kind of skipped over HAT feedback, but I do think it's important to mention.
Absolutely. So we as a requirement of the proposal, we had to get feedback from our stakeholder, a broad stakeholder group on these particular points. The proposed use of funding in the county, types of housing and habitability standards governing the funded shelter and housing, the roles, policies, and procedures governing outreach and law enforcement engagements with people at prioritized sites, changes the state should make regarding the overall state initiative, and then other issues of concern. Primarily, the issues of concern, there was significant commentary around communication and the lack of a communication plan and how important consistent and transparent and communication is going to be necessary, largely just because it's good practice, but also because the pushback from the public will fall on the backs of the providers and those experiencing homelessness, not to mention jurisdictional staff, but the burden often lies heavily on the shoulders of the providers that are doing the work that these contracts are paying for. I think there's a general primary issue of concern that this is coming down from the state, disregarding other strategic plans and best practices that we've been asked by the state to follow through on, and that our providers are funded to follow through on, to follow the 5-year plan and to participate in coordinated entry and to work to best practice, and that this initiative is, especially in the sense of its urgency, is circumventing a lot of that. And there's some concern about the impact that could have right now and then in the future. There was many gaps that were identified in terms of housing success. So we all know that just throwing people in hotels isn't a recipe for success, that there's a significant need for ongoing support through wraparound services. And many of the gaps that were identified were around safety issues and concerns for those experiencing or fleeing domestic violence or experiencing human trafficking, around there not being extra funding for advocates. And there's in the proposal, you'll read more specifically what is being requested in terms of that gap, that there's a gap in mental health and behavioral health staff for individuals that would be placed in enhanced shelters or what have you. There's no call out or funding set aside for targeted substance use treatment for those that desire it. There's no staff advocates to plan for safety for human trafficking victims. We have a significant dearth of provider staff currently in our current system, meaning it's difficult to keep people or to hire folks into these positions. And then with the continued outbreaks, our system is experiencing significant impacts to the point of having to shut down services just simply because they don't have enough staff or because they're going through outbreaks. So a significant need in growing the staffing capacity. And that was the feedback primarily. Also for seniors living in the right-of-way. I'm just looking at these right now as we outline them today. So lots of concerns. One other overarching need is that the initiative is clearly, there's an element of it that's really focused on optics and making people disappear from the right-of-ways and keeping them out of the right-of-ways, and how addressing homelessness in that way isn't going to solve homelessness. And so really concerned about how that messaging gets out there into the community, that there'd be an expectation from the public that it's just going to solve homelessness, and it won't. So just being really honest about that. Yeah, so that's most of the feedback that we got today.
Righty. Thank you, Keely. Any questions for Keely or anything that you want to add to Keely? Michael?
I'm not sure I don't know who this question is best posed for, whether it's you, Keely, or you, Jacinda, or maybe Tom, but it sort of seems to me like there's kind of these two tracks of work where we're trying to work out these legal agreements to implement something, and then also trying to work out the capacity side to actually have the services to sort of fulfill the spirit of the legal agreements. And it's not totally clear to me how the communication process works between those two things. It would seem to me that like under Boise, which like the Supreme Court declined to take up, so it's the law of the land in the Ninth Circuit, that if these units aren't online, like I understand we have 24 beds, but if these units aren't online, then we can't move people because we don't have the capacity to do that within the system. So is there language in the agreements that says like we're not going to move people until this new capacity is established, or how do those things communicate to make sure we're not exposing ourselves to liability under Boise?
Keely, I will let you go first.
You raise your hand.
Michael, so I am sure Keely will reiterate this. Want to make it very clear that this initiative came to us. We are not proposing to sweep any camps. Our our response does not propose that that sweep is being done by any of our jurisdictions or our outreach workers. It has been brought up in conversation with the state, with Department of Commerce, maybe a few weeks ago, as they started already sweeping Lily, the very thing that you said that isn't even legal. And I guess I will say that Commerce is very much feeling pressure from the governor's office, pressure that everyone is not moving fast enough, and they didn't seem too awfully concerned. But again, they would be doing the sweeping, not us.
I would also just add that they made it very clear that the Department of Transportation does not believe that Boise versus Martin is applicable to rights of way due to safety. So they're kind of writing on rights of way are not applicable, or Martin v. Boise isn't applicable to rights of way. And I think that the way that the governor is also making sure that just to cover all the bases is that no one can be moved without an offer. So there's got to be a meaningful offer and an improvement over where they're currently staying for them to be moved at all. So the reality is it's going to go much slower than what the governor would prefer, because we can't turn people, we can't kick 24 people out of Meg's shelter or the Unity Common shelter to put 24 people from the rights of way. Plus they have agency and they get to decide. So they don't have to take any offer. They just have to be offered.
Do we have any in the Unity Commons shelter yet? Of the right-of-way people?
We have a couple.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
I do.
Okay.
So Keely, on that note, on Michael's question, if someone doesn't take the services or the housing and moves on, is the by name list going to keep tracking them as right-of-way folks? If say for instance, the final day comes for sweeping and they don't move into housing, that they're still part of that program and someone else is ultimately responsible? Or if they move off those sites because they're cleared in the future and move somewhere else in one of our jurisdictions, are they then no longer on that list? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So we have asked this of our partners at the state as well, and they have said that once a person is identified in the rights of way as being a resident of the rights of way, that if they leave or they don't want to go to Unity Commons in June, if they are if they run into them further down the line, they're still on that by name list and they'll still be offered that.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And then similar to Michael's comments as well around capacity, if I'm tracking it right, we've been trying to buy a hotel and had money for 2.5 years. So what about not having property available to meet the mission?
Could you repeat that question? I don't know if I'm.
Well, I mean, what happens if we can't find willing hotel sellers? Are we using the power of the state and condemnation, or how's this going to work? Because clearly we've had the money and we haven't been able to get to an agreement.
I'm going to defer to someone smarter than I about this hotel situation.
Okay.
I don't know if I am smarter than you, but I will talk to it. So we have chosen to include hotel acquisitions in the proposal with caveat language that, like any acquisition, commercial or residential or any acquisition, just because we've said we'd like to do it and just because everything looks great now, we don't have complete control over that transaction, right? Like the sellers have to choose to sell, they have to choose to enter into the purchase and sell, they have to choose to be okay with those contingencies that need to be in a purchase and sale agreement. So as of today, the 2 hotels that we are proposing that have not been named publicly yet But I can say that both of those hotels do have a purchase and sale offer that has been submitted, and that the developer, affordable housing developer that we're working with, again, has a history of doing this kind of work. But we are all aware, you know, the tech team is aware, Darian, Keely, I, who have spent countless hours working on this, are aware. We've communicated to Commerce that, you know, it's an acquisition and we would like to do it, but just because it's in the proposal now doesn't mean it's a for sure thing that's going to go through, even if Commerce does give us money for it. Some things are out of our control. So I would say at this point, you know, if those fell through, which they could, I think it would be up to, I guess, in part, at least, this body and maybe the respective jurisdictions to decide if we want to pursue other hotels or not. These specific ones came to us through the affordable housing developer that we are working with. They have a broker that is actively looking statewide for hotels that are for sale, because they are doing this all over the place. Well, I don't know if they're on the east side yet, but they're working in King County, they're working in Pierce County. So their broker has been approaching them as they're made aware of stuff that's coming online, deals that are ending with hotel structures, so stuff that might be coming online soon. Yeah.
Okay, that's really helpful. And I think, to me, that's the thing that's different, is you're working with an organization that has experience flipping hotels for permanent supportive housing, and that's what they do, right? And yeah, and then I'll just throw out that, you know, as you know, I don't know what the status is, but the brand new hotel being built near the freeway in Olympia has a big sign next to it that says available, and there's no brand on it. So I'll just point that out. Thank you, Jacinda. I appreciate that response.
That's interesting. Right. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I do.
Carolina?
Yes. So it's more of a comment and more of like just how thankful I am to Keely, Jacinda, Darian for really working on this. You really have all the bases covered, and it's really, I know that you have invested a lot of time in this, so just thank you for your work on this, because it really, like, I really have my fingers crossed. I won't really be shouting the victory shout until we actually see something being done, but right now, all the work that you've done, it seems like it's been very thorough, so thank you for that.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Carolina. Thank you. I mean, to all of you who have been working so hard on this. These have been impossible circumstances when we were already juggling too much, and it's just amazing what you've been able to put together. And I hope you have some well-deserved vacation time coming soon. All righty. Well, that brings us to good of the order. Who has some? I think Tom, I know you wanted to say a couple of things, but
yeah, start
with you.
So an update on where we are with specifically HEN and coordinated entry contracts. So I think, as everyone is aware, Community Action Council declined to renew contracts with the county for HEN, which is housing and essential needs, as well as a rapid rehousing contract. And they declined to renew a contract with Family Support Center, who's the lead coordinated entry provider. So we have been working to kind of figure out a plan moving forward to make sure, especially for those, there are approximately 270 HEN clients right now who are having rents paid, and some of them have utilities paid as well. And then there's around 110 HEN clients that are actively seeking housing. That need support in terms of application fees, deposits, and those types of things. And then there's kind of new clients being referred into the program. So right now, the county, kind of in discussions with Ramiro and our financial services, the county is committed to ensuring that those August rents are paid, and the county will make those payments directly. So we are working feverishly. We've received client files from CAC. We're going through those, pulling out the relevant information, working on our processes to ensure that August rent payments do go out. July rent payments were sent out by CAC. We've sent out a kind of request to our providers to ask what the level of interest is to for other providers to pick up all or a portion of HEN kind of services. So whether that's the case management piece, you know, kind of paying rent assistance or others. So we're going to use that information to inform our plan going forward to how to identify a new provider or providers to pick up this program. So we're also working on a kind of a intermediate term solution. The county's hope is not to continue having to cut those rent checks, that we can find perhaps an interim solution to get those checks cut until new providers are on board. So understand there's certainly a lot of anxiety out there, both by kind of the HEN clients as well as landlords. Jessica Olson from our office is taking the lead and kind of responding to kind of questions, emails, and phone calls we've been getting, and trying to put out as much information as we can. But knowing that we still have answers that need to be developed. Kind of the tough part really right now is that case management piece. So we'll figure out how to get those checks cut, but it's really a challenge to kind of pick up that case management piece in the immediate term. So we're working on kind of doing our best we can to get that figured out. We've been engaging in conversations with Family Support Center around coordinated entry. So right now, Family Support Center is picking up kind of that workload of doing for single adults, as they also kind of look for longer term strategies to find the right provider to pick up the single adult, and perhaps an opportunity to kind of take a broader look at coordinated entry and kind of how that is structured. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So, you know, we're continuing to plug away kind of within our office, trying to find solutions and support people the best we can. So I don't know, Keely, if you would have anything to add to that.
No, I think that pretty much summarizes it. I feel like, you know, this is just another one of those, we didn't see it coming and now we have to respond from a sense of urgency, which is never the best possible way to approach issues pertaining to the survivability of vulnerable people. So just really appreciate all of the effort from our staff team and leadership.
So but happy to answer questions if we can that people have.
Anybody have questions for Tom? Looks like
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for, you know, scrambling, because if, you know, there's service disruptions, this issue is, you know, everything gets immensely more challenging. I mean, it already is immensely more challenging, but yeah, this is a hurdle.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could be more articulate than that. It's just.
The question I want to ask, I don't want it to sound like I'm asking for more work out of anybody at this point, but in my mind, trying to figure out how we assess the gaps that are going to happen, and is there some sort of safety net that we can try to implement beyond what you all have already described?
I wish there was a simple answer to that. I think that sense where, you know, the plane kind of disassembled and we're reassembling it while it's flying, there will be gaps and there will be people who will fall through those gaps. And I think we need to be honest about that. And so it's, I think on the one hand, it's difficult to identify. I mean, I think Jessica's doing a really good job of looking at, there's buckets of people, like circumstances, not people, but circumstances that people tend to be falling in. So we're tracking that as
Right.
best we can. We're communicating with our homeless service providers as best we can to facilitate swift responses to people who are in urgent crisis. But no, there's not. I mean, that's the problem is that there isn't a safety net, that these programs are also fairly siloed, that HEN is different than rapid rehousing, which is different than some of the other programs to keep people in housing or to get them into housing. And of course, HEN is wrapped up in Social Security and ABD and certain income limits and very specific eligibility requirements that DSHS is responsible for doing the intake. So it's just like makes it like, yeah. But I think that we are where we are, and we are experiencing this right-of-way issue because we do not have safety nets for thousands of people in our state.
I was
A
afraid that was
third of
gonna
our
be the
state
answer.
can't get by, so it's a big deal.
Yeah,
I would add, we are also in conversations with DSHS and Commerce on this. They're providing the support they can, and we're working with them to come up with strategies. So, having all those conversations. Yeah, this, in some ways, this was the safety net. So we just took a big, scissors and cut the net. And so now we're trying to kind of piece it back together.
yeah. It doesn't help that we're nearing 10% inflation and all this. It's hitting people pretty darn hard. Okay, anybody else have anything they want to share?
Yeah, hi Carolyn. I just wanted to make note about something. I shared this at our meeting the other day, but we were told by Commerce that there are several jurisdictions and counties that may not put proposals together for the right-of-way work, and that we've received a lot of kudos because we've been able to work together cross jurisdictions and come together with a proposal like this. And other partnering cities and counties have not been able to. They have not had an ongoing relationship that is afforded something like this. And because the RHC Tech team is so strong and collaborative and meets so frequently, that we've been able to put something together. We've received a lot of kudos from Commerce on our proposal, on our collaboration, and on our communication. So I just wanted to extend another kudos to my colleagues for being for having a lot of grit and tenacity to be able to do this, and for the foundation that we've laid to put proposal like this together. In the affirmation from Commerce really seconded that. So I just wanted to pass that along to know that the work is happening and it's being seen by the state, and hopefully we can see that come to fruition with a lot of our requests made in our proposal. So just wanted to share.
Thank you, Darren.
Carolyn?
Yeah.
Darren, can you tell everyone about the award, the actions we took last night for the new permanent supportive housing for families? Because I think that's another kudo to make sure everybody knows is coming soon.
Yes, so the Family Support Center's permanent supportive housing that has begun in 2018 and is looking to close tomorrow, July 14th. It's a big day for housing in the community. Family Support Center has been working a long time and really hard to get this across the finish line. The city of Olympia has about $5.5 million in the project, and all of those awards were presented to council last night in an approval package. So those were overnight FedExed with wet signatures about an hour ago to get the project closed on time. And so, yes, along with the county and the state and 12 other funding sources, and I know Trish is on the call right now, that is coming together, closing tomorrow with a sweet shovel ceremony the first week of August. So that's 62 more units of permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless families fleeing domestic violence, that's set for occupancy at the end of 2023. So another big project that's taken a lot of community partners, very trusted service provider, that's going to be coming to our community very soon. So another bit of exciting news. Thank you, Councilmember.
Trish, you're on the line. Do you want to add anything to what Darian said?
Oh, yes.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, thank you for that opportunity. Yes, we're very excited, and I had hoped to be able to attend the meeting last night and share my appreciation for the city's attorneys and paralegals who worked really hard. The paralegal had to come off of vacation in order to get these documents and things done in time. So on all ends, it was kind of a crazy, harrowing experience trying to get 12 different sets of documents all approved by all parties. But yeah, we're really excited to be able to finally move forward and dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and still have some things that could knock us a couple days out on that closing. But we're closing in time to receive our Housing Trust Fund dollars, which was the big final push that caused a lot of stress and pressure on the city in particular to get the documents in so that council could approve those last night. So we're very grateful and very excited and look forward to seeing all of you at our groundbreaking ceremony, which we don't have the date scheduled just yet. We are waiting to find that final closing date so that we would confirm that the project was moving before we scheduled that. But we'll try to give you as much notice as possible to come share in that, because all of you have greatly supported that and we appreciate it.
Thanks, Trish.
And I want to jump in and just kind of also thank Jacinda for the county getting all the county's already got their documents all in and signed. So not that it's a competition, but want to thank Jacinda for all her work getting the county's kind of piece of that done as well.
Righty, anybody else? Hearing none, it's 5:01, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Well, I'll move to it.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody. This is a hard spot, but it feels like things really are starting to come together, and we'll get through it. So, well, next meeting is July 27th, and we'll see you then. Bye.